Good morning. You're with me, Lynlee, and this is Morning Shot. Singapore's ruling People's Action Party's Women's Wing is calling for stronger support for families, especially towards women at the workplace and in the community. That was the heart of all the discussions that went down at its annual conference over the weekend. Some of the issues tackled include challenges faced by women at the workplace, as well as how various forms of flexible work arrangements can help them fulfill caregiving responsibilities. For more insights, we're joined by Yeo Wan Ling, Director of USME and Women and Family Unit, NTUC, and member of the Government Parliamentary Committee for Manpower. A very warm welcome to the show, Wan Ling.
Good morning, Lynn.
A very good morning to you. Now, starting off on a more personal note, how many hats did you wear in the last 24 hours?
Well, let me see. It was quite interesting. I had two durian parties.
Oh,
One durian party was for the constituency,
Mhm.
so I wore my MP hat.
right.
One was actually with Grab for the
Oh,
drivers because I'm also the advisor for the National Private Hire Vehicles Association.
and I'm sure at home,
At home, that's right. So I texted my mom this morning. Good
as a
morning to
daughter,
her.
yes.
Hi, mom.
Wow.
Sister, but also at the same time, I do quite a bit of work for the Women and Family Unit, of course, over at the unions.
Amazing. How do you balance all of that? And when it comes to attitudes towards women at work,
Right.
have you experienced or encountered any incidents in your time in the workforce?
Well, yes. Well, I would say that it comes from a point of view from both myself, as well as my constituents. I think on the constituents part, sometimes it really breaks my heart when I talk to moms who tell me that they actually really want to get back to the workforce, but
Oh.
because they have been out of the workforce for quite a number of years, they kind of lack the confidence in doing so, even though there are plenty of job opportunities out there. And part of the reason why they tell me that they lack the confidence is when they speak with companies, they tend to think that maybe employers aren't as understanding, of their situation when they want to get back to the workforce.
Yeah, clearly, acceptance of women at the workplace is very different in today's world compared to the past. But still, there's lots more improvement that we can work
Yes,
on. I'm
correct.
very sure. So, putting on your NTUC hat here, based on your engagements with women workers, what are the key areas you feel still need to be worked on?
Well, I think definitely it's like what I mentioned, it's definitely getting women back into the workforce, especially if they've been out for some time. Do you know, Lynn, that there's actually 260,000 women of economic age who aren't in the workforce?
Wow.
Yeah, 260,000. I'm sure there's a lot of SME taukees out there listening to this radio talk show now and salivating over this.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and the top two reasons why they tell us that they are not in the workforce, and this was actually based on a survey that the NTUC did together with the Women's Wing, was really number one, caregiving responsibilities. They need to look after the young, the old, and the infirmed at home. But the other piece too, which kind of was mind-boggling for me, was really because of housework. Can you imagine that?
So is this across what sort of age demographics?
So we're looking at 25 all the way to 60.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. And the part of the reasons that's keeping women out of the workforce is really because, like what I mentioned, some of them lack the confidence. Others perhaps feel that there isn't really the type of job options open up to them, even though there's plenty of jobs out there.
Yeah.
And it all boils down to something very important. It's called flexible work arrangements.
Yeah, and another thing that we're looking at also, certain sectors are traditionally male dominated and vice versa. For example, you see a lot of males in shipping, engineering, manufacturing
That's right.
because the work requires heavier manual labor and traditionally it's just more male dominated, right? Meanwhile, we also tend to see mostly females in nursing because perhaps of how
Caring,
women are
loving.
naturally built to be more nurturing and caring.
Right.
Are those just stereotypes? And is gender diversity necessarily better in those industries, you think?
Well, Lynn, I must say that, in that same survey that we did, we talked about gender stereotypes, and it's definitely prevalent, and I think there are certain jobs that, we automatically think that women are more suited to doing so, being in those job scopes and all that. But I do think that right now, with many progressive employers, they have kind of been like restructuring their jobs, redesigning their jobs, such that, it gives both sexes equal opportunity to be able to thrive well in those jobs. For instance, one of our partners in this, well, the Women and Family Unit, we have been promoting a program called the See You Back at Work program, and this is
Okay.
actually meant for female returners.
Mhm.
And one of the companies that we have been dealing with is a company called Chaitan Maintenance.
Mhm.
It's a unionized company, of course,
Mhm.
but more importantly, they have been introducing a lot of new technologies, robotics, and all that.
Mhm.
So much so that even in their industry, which is a cleaning industry, 70% are women.
Yeah, there are lots of women engineers out there, really.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, Wan Ling, earlier you mentioned a little bit about this, and we want to talk more about this. Flexible work arrangement.
Right.
We know is one area that you've been pushing employers to be
Yeah,
more open to.
that's
So
right.
through your engagements with, various employers, how much difference does it really make to a business?
It makes plenty of differences. Again, back to our surveys. And so, all that we're saying today is all backed by, what we're hearing from the ground. We did a survey of about 2,700 people. And these were all men and women, across all ages and all that. And essentially 87% of them said that it's a very important factor for flexible work arrangements to be in their workplaces for them to stay at work
Mhm.
or return back to work. And this is
Mm.
for both males and females. So,
Yeah.
employers out there, it's important for you to introduce flexible work
Yeah,
arrangements.
I think this has become even more cognizant because, or more apparent because of COVID. During the pandemic,
Exactly.
most of us were
Yes,
wearing so many hats and balancing so many
that's right.
things within the confines of our own home, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how can we ensure that it's fair for employers, though, especially SMEs that might have fewer resources to start with?
Right. Well, I think a lot of SMEs these days, they are looking for employees. And now that we know that 87% of people interviewed out there are interested in flexible arrangements, it's an important factor for them.
Mm.
It's even more important for them to be looking at introducing flexible work.
Mm.
But I do know that sometimes SMEs with limited resources, with, a smaller HR, department, they might have some difficulties doing that. And that's when, the unions are here to help you. The labor
Mm.
movement is here to help you. For instance, we have like company training committees.
Mhm.
We even have grants, to
Mm.
help companies in the process of job redesign. And I would
Mm.
say that a lot of people think that flexible work arrangements is just about working from home, but actually flexible work arrangements, there's a whole entire big range. We're looking at flexi time, for instance,
Mhm.
flexi place.
Mhm.
So it might not be at home, but somewhere nearer, to your home, but outside of home. And the other one too, which I think has been proven quite successful, is actually shared job arrangements. So
Mm.
as opposed to doing an 8-hour, working day, you're
Mhm.
looking at maybe like 4 hours divided by two,
Mhm. Mhm.
employees.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there are many, many ways to look around flexible work
Okay.
arrangements.
I'm just thinking, getting into a bit more detail, but
Mhm.
are there certain industries that might not be able or might find it more challenging to implement such flexible work arrangements?
Yes, definitely. I would say that there has been some discussions, particularly amongst workers from
Mhm.
those industries, on
Mhm.
whether or not flexible work arrangements can be done,
Mhm.
particularly if they need to be on site. But
Mm.
you know what? Over the last 1 year, I've been seeing quite a number of these industries with certain type of innovation, progressive thinking. They
Mhm.
were able to introduce flexible work arrangements. For instance,
Mhm.
we talked about caregiving just now.
Right.
Yeah, so
Nursing.
the
Mhm.
healthcare industry. So a lot of people do think, right, that for healthcare, you kind of need to be, in the hospital, you need to be with the
Mm.
patients and all
Mm.
that. And because of this, it was rather difficult for flexible
I'm sure,
arrangements
yeah.
to be done. But do you know that with the HSEU, the Health Services
Mhm. Mhm.
Union,
Mhm.
Employees Union, they have started to push for flexible work arrangements pilots in certain hospitals. And
Oh.
it's almost like a ninja workforce,
Oh.
type of arrangement they're looking at. So it's getting people to be, in a, I would say, well, in an arrangement where if let's say you need to come in to help supplement
Mhm.
whatever
Mhm.
that's lacking, you can tap on this ninja workforce.
Oh, how
Yeah,
interesting.
it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I
it
think with
is.
a little bit of innovative thinking, with a little bit of determination, actually most companies would be able to introduce flexible work arrangements.
There'll always be workarounds, as we say.
Exactly.
And for women workers especially, how big of a difference do you think this will make to them, flexible work arrangements?
Well, I think it will be huge. It definitely will allow a lot of women, to consider returning to the workforce. But I do think, right, it is important that we consider several things. Firstly, it's important that employers look at the job redesign process, because I think currently a lot of jobs out there don't really have, well, employers might say that they want to introduce flexible work arrangements, but I do think, right, that there's some ways to go in terms of implementing it. So it is important to see what works for the company. But I think the other bit too, right, for a lot of a lot of women, they have said that it is important for us to have flexible work, particularly in certain areas. The first one is definitely cutting down the commute.
That's right, yes.
Yes. Another one, right, is looking at work-life harmony or work-life balance. So I do think, right, that this would be flexible work arrangements would actually be a wonderful way to retain and keep people.
Yeah, on caregiving, it's not just about taking care of children, right?
It isn't.
There are lots of us, belonging to the sandwich generation.
And
We've
look
got
after
elderly
parents,
parents too,
and grandparents even.
Yeah. So what are firms not doing enough of on that front?
Well, I do. Okay, in that survey, one of the things that was brought up that we were quite we weren't surprised, but it's actually quite a high number of people mentioning the reason why they weren't, even though a firm is introducing flexible work arrangements, the top reasons why people weren't doing it. Number one was really because the work scope didn't provide for it, i.e., not enough job redesign opportunities. The second one, interestingly enough, was that the immediate supervisors weren't supportive. Yeah, so even though the company might have a policy on it, in the team dynamics, the supervisor wasn't really encouraging. Yeah, so I think these were some of the reasons why flexible work arrangements, even though it's introduced, perhaps, right, the policy around it, the company policy around it isn't that clear. Also in that survey, about 75% of SMEs with employees less than 10.
But most importantly, I think it's also the mindset of every individual.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Will there be specific aspects to be looking into in your capacities in both NTUC and the Manpower GPC in the coming months ahead?
Most definitely. I think it is important for us to look at two things. The first one is looking at programs. Yeah, so I did mention about the See You Back at Work program. It's a program that I think it's very welcome by both employees as well as employers. So in fact, if more companies would like to come and talk to us at the NTUC, the Women and Family Unit, about this, more than happy to do so. And wearing my women's wing hat, I think there is going to be a fair workplace legislation that's coming out as well. And to answer some of the questions that the survey respondents have mentioned, for instance, whether or not they're going to be discriminated in the workplace because of certain, choices that they make. Well, these will be some of the things that will be coming into place to make sure that the safety nets for the employees, but also at the same time for employers.
Wan Ling, thank you so much for all that you do and for sharing those insights with us this morning. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
Money FM 89.3